This is the Cutlass Black by Drake Interplanetary, the ship of choice for alternative mercenaries across the verse. Despite its somewhat unsavory reputation, it's one of the most popular ships in the game, being a great entry-level multi-role ship that's capable of participating in pretty much everything Star Citizen currently has to offer. We'll talk about it in detail from the bounty hunting point of view, but given its popularity as one of the best jack-of-all-trades and commonly recommended starter ship upgrades, we'll review its capabilities and some other aspects as well. So let's get into it. We're starting with an atmospheric VHRT on a moon. We've got a fixed laser repeater loadout, which is a solid option for this ship. One of the nice things about the Cutlass is that even though it's called a medium fighter, it has a bigger capacitor pool than other dedicated medium fighters. There's kind of two classes of medium fighters. There's the dedicated fighters like the Hornets, Buccaneer, Sabre, and the Reliance, and then there's the larger multi-role fighters like the Cutlasses and the Freelancers. The multi-role ships have almost twice the capacitor, which directly translates into almost twice the weapon magazine size. This deeper capacitor pool makes it more okay to have repeaters instead of cannons, and since we'll be able to fire for so long before having to recharge, we'll take out this Valkyrie pretty quickly. The actual DPS of cannons and repeaters are pretty much the same while they're firing, but cannons have higher overall DPS because they can fire for a lot longer before they have to recharge. Because having bigger magazine means you can fire for longer anyway, this mitigates some of the theoretical downsides of repeaters since a larger magazine gives you more firing time before needing to recharge. Yes, cannons will still fire for longer, but it's only an issue if you're able to keep your target in your sights for that entire time. And since the Cutlass isn't super agile, you'll naturally get opportunities to recharge your ammo every so often when you're readjusting your positioning. This Hurricane demonstrates that pretty well, since it'll evade us for a few seconds every so often, giving us a chance to recharge ammo. Since the Hurricane has a ton of HP, it's pretty small, and it's consistently trying to get away from us, it does take a while to kill it. You can see that I do end up missing a bunch of my shots, which is frustrating, but the good news is there is a better way to deal with Hurricanes that we'll talk about soon. For now, I just do my best to keep it within my sights, rolling so that I use my stronger pitch axis to target it, and it eventually dies. Now we'll show my preferred loadout for the ship for bounty hunting, which still has 3 fixed Panther repeaters, but now I also have a fixed distortion repeater. The distortion repeater is an energy weapon that does less damage against shields than the laser repeaters, and it doesn't damage the enemy hulls at all, but it'll disable the enemy's internal components once you hit their hull with it. Hurricanes have a lot of hull HP and are hard to hit, so it's really useful to disable them so that they're just flying aimlessly into space, not evading your fire or fighting back. In this bounty, the other enemies around me are all light fighters, and some of them have the issue where they're not targetable. Since their damage isn't too concerning to me, I'm just focusing down the Hurricane first, and then I'll get out of there. If you wanted to take out the wingman as well, you could warp away to an orbital marker and warp back to the bounty, and then they should be targetable. Thanks to the distortion damage, this Hurricane is disabled now. We can see its EM signature dropped, indicating that some systems have shut down, and it's not fighting back or turning. So now it's just a matter of time before it dies. Here we're picking up partway through the fight. We killed a Valkyrie but took a beating in the process and escaped to regenerate our shields before re-engaging with the remaining Warden and 2 Hurricanes. Since we're a pretty large ship with only a single size 2 shield, disengaging will be common when you can't separate the enemies. Also, the shape of our ship doesn't do us any favors since we're a large target from every angle. We're also a pretty fragile target, as you're about to see here when one of the enemies knocks off our right engine. Cutlass has 2 engines and 2 forward weapon pylons, all of which are susceptible to getting knocked or blown off, and this unfortunately happens pretty frequently. When the weapon pylons get blown off, you'll lose one of your front weapons too, which makes it even worse. That said, assuming you've got all your engines, the Cutlass is decently agile for its size, especially when you use the recommended practice of rolling and pitching towards your target. The bottom and rear thrusters on your ship are the strongest, so by rolling and pitching towards your target, you're using your strongest thrusters to help you keep the enemy in front of you. In the Cutlass, we've got more maneuvering thrust capacity than a Sabre in the up and down and side to side directions, and we're roughly equivalent to the Sentinel, which also handles pretty well. Thanks to our decent handling and flight tactics, and the disabling power of distortion, we're able to easily deal with the bounty target even without an engine. The last bit of combat I wanted to show was proof that the Cutlass Black can even do ERTs with the distortion fit if you like to live dangerously. To save time, we're starting partway through the fight. I cleared out the wingman before engaging the hammerhead to minimize the incoming damage since we're a large target with only a single shield. If you maneuver well, you'll be able to avoid most of the incoming fire. I made a mistake and accidentally cancelled my movement while rotating around and took a bunch of fire, and that's all it took to make my front left weapon pylon red. But I know that the hammerhead's shields have been down for a bit, so they must be close to getting shut down by the distortion damage. So instead of trying to recharge shields, I press the offensive and the commitment pays off. The hammerhead is no longer shooting back, which means we've secured the kill. I'll skip ahead to the kill, but the total time to take the hammerhead out was about 3 minutes. That said, there isn't much margin for error in the execution, so I'm not sure I'd recommend this to other people. So I'm going to show the fixed repeater fit here, but you could go gimbaled for the 11% DPS loss if you are struggling to hit targets with fixed weapons. You'd want to use the CF series Badger repeaters with the XJ2s in that case, but here we have the size 3 Panzers with the XJ3. I've changed the missile racks to 481 racks to get a total of 48 size 1 missiles, and I recommend EM missiles since all ships have high EM signatures in 316. For the shield, all grade A shields get more health and recharge rate, and the civilian ones are cheapest, so that's what I'm using. In 316, upgrading the power plants and coolers won't do anything for you, so you can leave them alone. Lastly, I'd recommend getting a military grade quantum drive so you can get around the verse more quickly. The grade C crossfield is a great cost-effective option, but you can shave a few seconds off the long warps if you're willing to spend 35k more for the grade A XL1 drive. Let's start by taking a look inside the ship. There's one main entrance via the rear ramp, which you can access from the switches on either side of it. Once you get inside, the switch to close the ramp is on your left. This is also how you can open it from the inside. Here we've got the cargo bay, which also has 2 side load doors that can be opened and closed by switches flanking each one. You can quickly hop out of the ship from these doors, but to get in you'll need something to help you get a leg up, like a box or a rock or a vehicle. As we move forward through the ship, we'll enter the habitation area, which has some gun racks as well as 2 beds and access to the well-positioned turret. In Drake fashion, there aren't really any creature comforts here. At the front, you'll see the co-pilot seat and then the pilot seat, which will rise up when you get in, and give you access to 6 MFDs, which is nuts. For combat, I think 4 is the sweet spot. Beyond that, I'd rather have more external visibility. The ship's main engines have VTOL capability, but you don't need it on any of the planets and stanton, so you can just leave them in flight mode, facing backwards. It might be useful in the future if new planets have more gravity though. This ship has a lot going for it. As we've seen, it's definitely capable at combat and actually has an incredibly high missile loadout, putting it in the ballpark of dedicated missile boats. Also, in my opinion, the somewhat Spartan design of the ship makes it one of the coolest feeling ships for a ground assault due to the wide open side doors. It can really make for a cost-effective FPS combat dropship if you don't mind your assault team getting jumbled around in the back a bit. And it's got a generous 1.5 SCU of inventory storage for hauling away the loot after the assault. Speaking of hauling, it's pretty versatile with decent storage space that has multiple access points, which is useful for events when you need to maneuver in close to somewhere to quickly load up the ship. It's also supposedly going to get a tractor beam to help move cargo at some point, which will make it even more versatile. The spacious cargo bay opens up other careers beyond just hauling too, since it'll enable you to carry ground vehicles. Let's see what we can fit in there. Let's validate some of its claimed multi-role utility by seeing which of the ground vehicles fit in the back of the Cutlass Black. I'm not going to try fancy tricks to get things to fit. I want to see what vehicles will comfortably load into the back without risking clipping and explosions. Let's start with the Aopoa Nox, which is a racing hoverbike. It fits in easily, but you'll want to lower the ride height so you don't clip the top. Next, let's try out the new hover quad. It also fits easily, and even has plenty of room available to turn around. Next is the Ballista anti-air missile battery. It packs a punch, so it's pretty big and doesn't fit in the back. Next we've got the Cyclone. I'm showing the anti-air variant here, and also the turret variant. Both of them fit, so I think all Cyclones will fit as long as you're driving carefully up the ramp. Here we've got the Dragonfly, also made by Drake. It's a 2-seater hover bike, so it's pretty small and doesn't have a problem fitting as long as you adjust the ride height to not clip at the top or the ramp, which I didn't do there. Next, we've got the big bad Nova tank. Despite my best attempts, it doesn't seem to fit, which is kind of a surprise. I would have expected more from such a popular ship. I even tried expanding the space on the inside a bit with the cannon shells, but didn't have much luck. I guess you're stuck using the Hercules Starlifters to transport these. Fortunately, next up is the PTV golf cart, which, unlike the tank, isn't a disappointment and can easily fit into the back of the cuddy. Now we'll prove out some of the versatility by trying out a rock, which is used for ground mining operations. It fits in pretty easily. There's another ground mining vehicle meant for 2 people called the Rock DS. It looks like it should be able to fit, but I tried a few times and kept having it clip the sides and ride up. You might be able to make it fit, but I'm going to say no. Now this is the Spartan Troop Transport, which uses the same platform as the Ballista anti-air missile battery, so it's not going to fit in here either. The last vehicle to try is the Ursa Rover, a ground exploration vehicle that's just a bit too wide to fit through the back entrance. So overall, a lot of the ground vehicles can fit in the back. You'll have plenty of options for ground-based reconnaissance, mobility, and light assault. Unfortunately, there are also a few non-trivial things going against this ship. There's a minor downside of having to go through the cargo bay to get to and from the cockpit, which means you have to be careful not to block yourself when loading the ship up. As I mentioned before, the ship's forward gun pylons and rear engines are often damaged and easily knocked off. And if you try to repair the ship when this happens, you can encounter a bug where the hull reappears, but you're still missing the engine inside of it, and have to do a character reset. The way around this is to just claim the ship anytime you lose critical parts. Also, there's a weird foghorn-like noise whenever you're thrusting forward, which I guess gives the ship some character, but then there's other things that give it too much character, like the fact that anytime you're thrusting forward in atmosphere, the ship will pitch downwards. This even happens in space if you're going faster than the SCM speed, which makes it a pain anytime you need to manually fly somewhere. And like I had mentioned in the beginning, this is a jack of all trades, which means there are other ships in the same class that'll do specialized roles better. The Freelancer Max is better for hauling goods, the Vanguard Sentinel is better for solo combat, the Hurricane and the Redeemer are better for multi-crew combat. There's even a Cutlass Blue variant that's better at combat, and a Cutlass Steel that's better at being a dropship. But as the saying goes, a jack of all trades is a master of none, but oftentimes better than a master of one. And that's exactly when you should get this ship, is when you need that entry-level multi-role capability. It is great at that role. I think I'd even recommend it over the Freelancer, which is a ship that I love. The Freelancer does have better firepower with the weapons being gimbaled by default, better shielding with twice the shields, and a better interior living space with the room and amenities for 4 occupants. But it's incredibly slow, it flies absolutely terribly in atmosphere, and despite having a larger cargo bay, the bay is split and therefore less convenient. Even despite its flaws, the Cutlass Black is a great ship, and its popularity is well deserved. Thanks for watching, folks. I hope you've liked this video. Cheers.